Peace, this is Doug. I've got my Digitakt here, and what I want to do is finish up a beat that I started. So for folks that missed the first one, this is a little two-parter. Last time around, I went step by step through putting together a loop. It sounds exactly like this. What I'm going to do this time is just give it some structure. I'm going to give it an intro, a sort of verse part, and a little chorus / outro. Since this is the first time I'm doing this, I'm once again going to keep things pretty simple. All I'm going to do is have a few quick fills here and there, some mutes, and just for fun, I'm going to fade a few things in and out smoothly with an LFO. The way I like to do things is to program my patterns in kind of a linear way. So in this case, pattern 1 is just going to run straight through to pattern 8. The Digitakt doesn't save pattern chains, so if I set things up this way, then I don't need to remember what order everything's in. So here's what I'm going to do. Actually, first thing, I'm going to fix this pattern here. This is the 10-step hi-hat pattern from last time. I'm actually going to make this 16 steps. I'm just going to copy these 3 tricks here. Actually, I'm going to make all my drum tracks 64 steps. Then I'm going to copy this whole pattern and put it off to the corner here. I like to set my original patterns off to the side. That way I can mess up all the patterns in my arrangement and I can still refer back to the original here or just copy and paste it if I want to make a new section. Okay, so let's go back to pattern 1. And I'm just going to talk you through what I'm aiming for as I'm doing it. Pattern 1 is going to be the first half of my intro. And what I want to happen is I want to start with just the sample and the hi-hats. And for the hi-hats, I just want the quarter notes, because what I want this to sound like is kind of like a drummer just tapping on the pedal. And then they're going to come back in going into the 4th bar. So for my kicks and my snares, I don't want them at all on the first 3 bars. I want them to just come in on that 4th bar, which is going to be the fill. So I'm going to get rid of the first 3 pages of the snare. For the fill, what I want it to sound like is kind of like boom, tap, tap, ba-boom, ba-boom. So I'm going to have another snare here, lower the velocity, get rid of this one altogether. And then for the kicks, we're once again going to clear out the first couple of bars. I'm going to get rid of all of them on the 3rd bar except for this little kick here. And then for the 4th bar, I don't want this kick here and I don't want this one here, but I do want this here. So all together, it's going to sound like this. So that's the first half of the intro. For the next part, I'm going to go back to the original pattern, copy it, and paste it over onto pattern 2. And the only thing that I'm going to change is I want these hi-hats to drop out on the 4th bar. And now we're ready to move on to the verse. Okay, so for the verse part, I mainly just want the high part of the sample to drop out and then come back in every now and then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to pattern 3. And then on track 5, that's the high part of the sample. I'm going to leave this first bar alone, and then I'm going to drop it out after that. So I'm going to clear out these here. And then for the drum track, I'm just going to take out this hi-hat and this kick drum. For the other half of this section, I'm going to paste my pattern again on pattern 4. And what I want to happen on track 5, I want the highs to just not be there for the first couple of bars. And then I want them to pop back in at the end. So I'm just going to delete that one and it's going to pop back in right there. And now I'm going to just drop off this hi-hat. And so now all together, the first half of the verse sounds like this. All right, so we're on the back half of the verse, and it's going to be mostly the same, but we're going to do some fades and add another fill. So first I'm going to copy this first part of the verse, and I'm going to paste it over here. And the only changes that I'm going to make, I'm going to drop out these two trigs from track 5, and I'm going to drop out these two hi-hats. So now what I'm going to do is go back to my original pattern and paste that over to pattern 6, and we're going to do our fades. We're starting with track 5, and what I want to happen is I want no highs on the first 2 bars, so I'm going to clear them out. Then for the 3rd bar, I'm going to fade them in, and then they're going to play out for the 4th. And so obviously I can't just draw that kind of automation like I can with a DAW. But what I can do is use my second LFO. Alternatively, I could just record myself turning up the volume as the sequencer runs, but I'd prefer to do this with an LFO. So the shape that I want is a ramp. I'm going to set the speed to 8 and the multiplier to 8 as well. And what that's going to mean is that the full phase of the LFO is going to be 2 bars. This is going to be pointed at the track's volume, and what's going to happen is it's going to ramp up from 0 to the track's current value of 110. So the depth of the LFO is going to be 110. So right now the LFO isn't doing anything because it doesn't have a destination, but for these 3 steps, I'm going to set the destination to volume. And because I want them to ramp up from 0, I'm going to set their volume to 0. And since I want this LFO to start right here, this one is going to be set to trigger. It's going to be a similar story for track 4. What I want to happen is on the 4th bar, right after the highs have faded in, I want the lows to fade out. So what I'm going to do before I move over to track 4 is copy the LFO. Then I can just paste it here because the only thing I need to change is that this depth needs to be negative 110 instead of 110. And then just like last time for these steps, I'm going to point it at volume. And this time around, I don't need to change their volume because I want it to ramp down from the current value. So yeah, this is a weird way to do it, but I like it. And I really like the way that you can make LFOs sort of pop in and out of existence on the Digitakt. And even if I had a second LFO for each of these tracks, there's nothing to stop me from using the LFO the same way I did for these steps. I would just need to parameter lock the rest of the LFO settings. All right, so now we're going to program a little drum fill. First, I forgot to set this to trigger, but let's move over to the snare, and I'm going to set it up like the first drum fill. So there's going to be a snare here, like boom, tap, tap. I'm going to lower the velocity here, and then this time around, I want it to be like boom, tap, tap, but tap, tap, but tap, tap, tap. And so there's going to be a snare here, here, lower the velocity, little swing on that step, copy that there, and for the kicks, I don't want this one here. I don't want this here. I'm going to copy this here and then delete it. And then I'm going to take out this one here. So, moment of truth. Let's hear how this all sounds together. Okay, so now I'm going to put in my last 2 patterns. I'm going to copy this from the original. The 8th pattern is going to stay the same, and the 7th, all that I'm going to change is I'm going to drop out this hi-hat, this kick, and this first trig from track 4. All right, so let's set this all aside for just a minute. What I showed you is a mostly straightforward way to do all this, but most times if I'm sitting down to put together a beat like this, I would probably try to cram it on as few patterns as possible using trig conditions. That's why I prefer to use LFO over motion sequencing. And the reason that I do all that is if I want to have this be a part of something that's like a larger set, then there's actually a limit on how many patterns you can chain together. I named named a whole beat tape after it. It's 64. So right now, this is 8 patterns. It could just as easily be 3 with the exact same automations. But in this case, this is a one-off, so that wasn't a concern, and we could do it complicated the next time around. Anyway, I'm going to chain all these together and we'll hear the whole thing. But before I let you go, please like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, on Bandcamp, and don't hesitate to leave any questions or comments about how your MPC actually does this a lot easier. Peace.